chilling tales for dark nights.
You have one new message. Main menu. To listen to your messages, press 1. First new message. Received today at 2:52 a.m.
My freshman year of college was one of the funnest years of my life, and some of my fondest memories are from that year, but it was also the scariest and strangest year to date. I'm 31 now. This is thanks to a series of events that took place over the entire school year. I still sometimes wonder why it happened, and how I didn't end up as a complete recluse, shutting myself off from the entire world. It still freaks me out to this day. I've only ever talked about it once or twice since it happened 13 years ago. But something happened this morning that completely changes everything. So, it's August 2001, and like most freshmen, I live in the dorms at a state party school. I opted out of the good school I got offered. I guess I had a little steam to blow off after graduating from a military boarding school. Plus, after a really bad sports injury, I didn't exactly have any specific plan for life that went past Saturday night, if you know what I mean. A good buddy of mine from military school called Bill went to the same college and lived a few floors below at the same dorm as me. So of course, we get the party started before my parents' exhaust fumes had even evaporated from the parking lot. For the most part, the first month or so of college was pretty much like that. Normal. I went to most of my classes, partied just about every night, chased girls around, and that was enough for the moment. But things began to change one night, sometime in mid-September, and college for me would never be normal again. We didn't have cell phones back then, just dorm phones, landlines, if you wish. My dorm phone rings in the middle of the night. On the other end, I can only really describe this voice as the kind you picture when you think about a computer talking. Kind of like an early model car GPS.
Hi Gary. How are you today?
Not fully awake, I'm just confused at this point. Who's this? He repeats.
Hi Gary. How are you today?
It becomes clear I'm being messed with, so I just hang up and chuckle. Bill, nice one. I pass back out. I ended up forgetting about the call for a few days, and never mentioned it to Bill or anyone else. About a week later, I get another call around the same time of night.
Hi Gary. I'm watching you.
Seriously, Bill, how are you not knee-deep in pussy right now? Enough already. Katie's gonna start getting pissed off. Katie's my roommate. I hang up. I casually confront my oh-so-clever amigo at breakfast the next morning, purposely not trying to bite too hard, to give him a payoff that might incentivize continued calls. I also wasn't 100% sure it was actually him, and not another one of my douchebag friends. He gives a genuinely confused response. Whatever. So a couple of days after the second call, I come home to see I had multiple messages on my answering machine. What the fuck? I barely knew that thing even worked. It's computer voice guy. Message 1.
Gary. I'm watching you.
Message 2.
I thought I asked you to answer my calls, Gary.
Message 3.
Where might Gary be on a Tuesday night?
Okay, so one of my friends is clearly a cunt, or bored enough to really push for a reaction here. The next day, I play the messages for Cade, who's around during the calls which were apparently earlier in the night, when he was still awake. He'd been a close buddy since we were in junior high, but we'd sort of taken separate paths after high school. So anyway, he's aware I'm a wild child and thinks nothing of the first couple of messages, but by the third, he's a little spooked. I then walk down to a couple of the buddies' rooms and casually but immediately bring up the subject. Nothing. Over the next couple of days, I press all my close and semi-close friends, but get zero answers and zero suspects. The calls start coming more frequently over the next couple of months, starting at once a week, then once every 2 to 3 days, up to every day at Christmas break. I don't say anything to my family at this point, although looking back, I really should have. What started out as a decent beginning of college turned into not showing up for any classes, tests, nothing. My grades reflected, and I'm too busy answering for a 0.6 GPA to talk about some dumb prank that would likely get dismissed as a pathetic excuse. After an uneventful break, it's back to school. Determined to become a new man. I've got to get my act together with these fucking grades, I thought to myself. So I tell Bill I'm going to chill out and focus on school. The first night back, I get my first spring semester call from computer voice guy.
How is your family in Cyprus?
Okay. Now this is getting ridiculous. What kind of bellends am I hanging out with that would even have the discipline to drag out a prank for this long? I get the answer to that question a few days later, and the answer is none of them. The calls then start to become threatening, and just downright dark.
I'm very interested in you, Gary. I'm very interested in being close to you. I have tools I can bring. It's gonna be all over so soon.
One day I bring Bill and all my other buddies up to hear these messages. I had never deleted a single one for some reason. I guess when things happen over long periods of time, you don't really feel the impact of it all until you lay out every shred of evidence you have. The guys are in shock. I guess I should mention that some of these calls got really specific in making sure to know specific details about my parents' address, as well as all the violence they're planning on doing to me. Cutting your esophagus, Gary, with a butter knife, and all sorts of other fucked up shit. It's sort of blurred together through hundreds upon hundreds of calls I get over the school year. A female friend of mine that I really liked in high school, called Layla. She goes to a different school hundreds of miles away. We reconnected, thanks to MSN, and talk from time to time on the phone. Computer voice guys mentioned your friend a couple of times, and made threats about this unspecified person, but your friend turned into your friend Layla. Layla and I are the only two people ever named in these calls. It did get me wondering if this was a new lead to the source. Layla is clueless when I call her about it. Brilliant. I know it sounds like I'm dragging this on a bit, but you'll understand why when I tell you what's about to happen next. One night, we're all partying and drinking at some hotel. I forget to mention all the straight A student crap went out the window as these events progressed. A different friend of mine named Carl. He had a nice big truck that we go everywhere in. He passed out drunk at the hotel after downing a whole litre of vodka. I'm not really drinking tonight, and I just want to get back to my own bed. I snatch Carl's keys to drive back to campus, thinking I'll drive back to pick everyone up in the morning. This was one of the few times I'd even driven this year, so I wasn't exactly tip-top on my directions. I make an early turn. I'm somehow down a road I've never seen before. I realise this pretty quick, but I figure I've got the general direction of campus pegged, so I can just continue down the road until hitting the familiar highway that I knew I'd eventually have to hit. I find myself in open fields. Still a paved road and everything, but aside from the road, there was absolutely nothing, and it was completely black. It's around 3 AM, and there's this strange four-way stop I come across. Strange because I'm probably the fourth person in the year to drive on that road. a bit unnecessary. Anyway, I trudge along, eventually get to the familiar highway and home. A few days later, computer voice guy interrupts in his usual depraved and threatening way, and mentions that specific 4-way road, the day, and the time that I was on it. Which, like I said, was around 3 AM, but there wasn't a soul in sight. So yeah, I now realise computer voice guy is obviously tracking my movements somehow. Quick note, I later joined the military and worked in intelligence, and worked special operations and tracked bad guys all around the world. But to this day, I still can't figure out how this dude knew I was in the middle of those fields, on that day, in the middle of the night. I never mentioned it to anyone. Around March, this apparent rendezvous became computer guy's focal point. He'd make sure to let me know the day was close. The calls were becoming no fewer than 10 or 15, every single day. Seriously. The ringer was now shut off courtesy to Cade, and I turned down the volume on the answering machine as his phone calls recorded. But I finally get the message I've been waiting for. Keep in mind, I've now become somewhat famous, or rather infamous, at this university by now, because of computer voice guy. People were constantly knocking on my door wanting to hear these messages. Friend of a friend or whomever I know. It's all people wanting to talk about at parties. Blah blah blah. I suppose for a split second it was kinda cool, because I'm pretty sure I ended up getting a few days indirectly from introductions conceiving through these interests of the guy with the stalker. Don't judge me. Moving right along. The day, time and location are set.
We will meet in front of Coleman Hall at midnight, Wednesday the 27th of April, and we will take our friendship to the next level.
I know what you're thinking. And yeah, throughout the year I had considered the possibility that I was dealing with a female. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And I was definitely that dude when I was around 18 or 19 that could have attracted that clinginess and anger. But I started to rule out a female for various reasons that only a fellow ENFJ would understand. Look it up if you're not tracking. I can build profiles with every high ratio of accuracy to available information. This creep just didn't feel like a female to me. It didn't even feel like a peer. I was convinced I was dealing with a mid-30s white male computer nerd that I'd somehow come into contact with at some point in my life. It didn't really matter because, with what I ended up finding out on Wednesday the 27th, which by the way was Layla's birthday, I was wrong. Of course, everyone wants to be part of this juicy story, and there's a pretty ridiculous amount of testosterone floating around the dorm on game day. This was a real-life creepster, a legit horror story unfolding before our very eyes. These guys are ready to defend me with their lives. So while these fucking idiots are all getting hopped up on Mountain Dew, I stay home that afternoon, wondering what on earth I was going to do at midnight. Of course I was going to go, but dude, I've always been an athlete in good shape. Wrestling, football, baseball teams, yada yada. But I'm still a 19-year-old white male. Good parents, grew up in middle upper class white suburbia, had a good life. In other words, I can definitely hold my own in a street fight, but whatever this is, doesn't feel like anything like a street fight. This is just disturbed, violent, angry, possibly grown-ass psychopath that has decided to dedicate almost a full year of his life to targeting and terrorising me. So yeah, I'm a little nervous. My home team crowd steadily build up throughout the afternoon and evening, with probably close to 70 or 80 guys grouped around our dorm's common area, smoking cigarettes and talking about beating the shit out of people, getting fucked up, and all the other generic cliche bollocks you can imagine. Once the party hour approaches though, over half of the guys splinter off into various propositions. They probably included more traditional fun, like beer bongs and girls. I'm left with about 20 to 30 member platoon. I had decided earlier that I was not going to allow these knuckleheads to shadow me, but I could definitely use them in case of an emergency. I didn't want to risk them spooking out of the meet, so I let them know they will need to stay inside of the doors in the common area while I walk out to the meeting spot. Coleman Hall was adjacent to our connected girls' dorm, and about 300 paces outside, door to door, to get to the hall. The witching hour came. So, I leave the crew and begin the longest couple of 100 or so paces of my life. The guys can see me through the glass doors, but they won't really be able to see much once I get to the Coleman Hall door, about 100 paces out from my spot. I observed two things at the same time. One, some kind of small, quick movement in front of the patio walkway that goes all the way around the building. And two, the movement was in a spot along the walkway where the only normally uber bright bulb is out. I'm not exactly sure how I was able to see him, but I suddenly realised someone is crouched behind one of the bushes outside the patio perimeter, against one of the building pillars, in dark clothes and a hoodie. He is a few feet off from the path where I'm supposed to meet him, and positioned to where I really shouldn't have been able to see him given the pillar blocking any shadow. I could have easily walked all the way to the door without even noticing him. I sort of jump mid-step as this happens, and I see him raise up a bit, thinking I might have seen him. I see him rise up and take a step towards me. Fight or flight hits. I've learned that my particular fight or flight chooses fight in more mild situations, flight during intense situations, but for serious shit yourself situations, it's scarier to run away with your back turned to whatever scary thing I'm dealing with. So I fight. Before I realise what I'm doing, I'm in a dead sprint towards this fucker, who I'm guessing sees what I can't yet, which is my platoon bursting through the glass doors in hot pursuit. This creep nopes the fuck out of there, running on the patio alongside Coleman Hall towards the parking lot. I can tell this isn't the mid-30s computer nerd I predicted. Creepster is above average height, above average broad, and built athletically. That's all I could tell really. I'm not even sure if he was white. He was at least tanned, if not Hispanic Middle Eastern. I'm really sprinting at this point, as he right turns on a dime at the edge of the building. I realise I'm moving fast enough to catch him, but everyone else is really far behind. I also realise I'm moving so fast I won't be protected as I turn hard at the corner of the building. If he stops there, I'm toast. I turn the corner and see a van sitting alone in a parking lot in front of me. It's running. The brake lights flicker on then off, and begins itching forward towards the exit. Creeper is of course heading for the van, which for some reason sent this whole new level of fear into me. This is it. This is really fucking happening. I'm gonna get murdered tonight. But I can't stop. Something keeps me moving forward. I guess I come this far dealing with all this crazy shit for almost a full year now, completely unable to do anything other than trying to ignore it. I'm not exactly going places academically at this point, and my life doesn't quite have all the much purpose in it yet. If I'm gonna get killed, I will at least know, and this shit will finally be over. Plus I still have a chance to catch this madman before he gets away. If I could just get close enough to dive tackle, I would still be on my own to deal with this creepster. His driver, and now I realise there's a third one, manning the sliding door. Awesome. I don't care how badass you think you are when you're a 19-year-old jock, but your chances of taking down 3 grown-ass men that are already violent criminals prepared to victimise are about 1 in not fucking happening. My turn is wide and slow, due to being in a full-on sprint, and I lose ground. I'm probably around 20 yards from the van, when he does a flying leap into the side of it. There couldn't have been any row seats for a leap like that. Creepster number 3 slams the sliding door shut, as the van peels out of the parking lot, bangs a right, and is gone in an instant. The relief of not being kidnapped, bound and gagged in that van with those three psychos, who most likely had some pretty horrific plans for me, is just now as strong as the dread of the fact that this is still not over. I was speechless, and so was my platoon as they catch up a minute later. A few of them caught up enough to witness the parking lot scene, but no one was talking. Testosterone had now been replaced with genuine concern. They all stood there with me, catching their breath and making sure I was alright. One guy asked if anyone got a number plate. Not even I did. Not enough light. We started walking back, and I'm reliving these scenes as we retrace our steps. As we get closer to the original meeting spot, I see something that scares me more than anything else in this entire equation has up to this point. On the opposite side of the pillar, where this sick fuck was crouching, there was a video camera. It was still recording. 13 years on from this traumatizing day, I woke up this morning at 3 AM from a notification on my phone with a voice recording.
Hello again, Gary. It's been so long.
Chilling tales for dark nights.